With less than 100 hours to the beginning of the next and final 4 years of President Muhammadu Buhari, what are the major tasks ahead of the President and the next Executive Council? Channels TV's data information consultant, Babajide Ogusowo, is here to answer those questions. Babajide, third time in a row we have the crystal ball.
Oh, yes, we're trying to look at the forecast for the next 4 years. Who will be the new ministers? And I've been looking carefully at this, and I see a name, Amara, and I'm not too sure if that's you. But here's what is important and what Nigerians will be looking for towards the next less than 100 hours.
Mm-hmm.
There's something similar between what happened 4 decades ago, what happened 4 years ago, and what Nigerians perhaps will be talking about in the next 4 days. What's this? The politics of belonging. Here's what I mean. Exactly 4 decades ago, Chief Awolowo was talking about, I know where I belong. And that was what a lot of Nigerians were talking about. That Chief Awolowo had come out in the political season to say, I know where I belong. 4 decades after that, 2015, President Buhari talked about, I belong to nobody. Now, 4 days from now, here's what Nigerians will be talking about. Where does the future of Nigeria belong? Some people will be talking about who does 2023 belong to. But the Constitution puts a rest to this whole politics of belonging. The first mention of belongs is found in section 14, subsection 2A of the Federal Constitution. And it says, sovereignty belongs to the people. Here's what I mean. For the next 4 years, the focus of the President and of the Executive Council should be on the people. All projects, programs, and policies should be people-centric because the people comes even before the government.
Yeah, and so what sort of projects should we have? What sort of projects and programs should the Executive Council prioritize?
So here's what I think. The first 4 years focused on projects. Project requires spending money. The next 4 years, yes, projects are good, but the next 4 years for the President and the Executive Council should focus on policies. Because on one hand, project focuses on making money, policies focus on how to make money. And so the evidence shows that while it is important that we spend money that will support growth, development, and improve the standard of living, it is important for all ministers to also now focus on policies that will ensure that the Federation makes more money. And that should be the agenda. If you are setting an agenda for the next 4 years, yes, the agenda should be great leadership, but in specifics, what should be the mission of the President and his Executive Council? And here's what the evidence shows. The mission of the government should be ensuring that we limit all factors that are stopping us from growing further than our current 2% growth rate. That should be the mission. Limiting all factors of growth, identifying and limiting them so that we can grow faster than we currently are.
Is there no responsibility for citizens? I mean, how apart from measuring the performance of the Executive Council, do they have a stake in this administration?
Oh, yes. Security and welfare is the purpose of the government. And so the citizens are involved in how does the government ensure that all the taxes they pay contributes to making them safer and making them more prosperous. So if there are several indicators that we could look at, but what the citizens are concerned about and the questions they should ask all elected representatives, especially now that we know the president is in his last 4 years, should be how well are we doing when we look at security and the welfare of the people. But in the final analysis, let's remember the words of John Maxwell. He says, change is inevitable, but growth is optional. Change is inevitable, but growth is optional. So the question of tonight is, what sort of options are going to be on the table for the president to ensure we grow and we develop faster?
Do the people have options?
I think the people have options. The people have elected their leaders. Now the leaders have the responsibility to ensure that they deliver on their performance. The government, in its economic recovery and growth plan for 2019 to 2020, is targeting 4.5% growth rate. The people deserve a rate higher than that. Is the government facing challenges to ensure that it meets up to this growth rate? Yes, there are challenges, but the responsibility of the leader is not to identify the problems, is to provide solutions, Amarachi, to the problems. But the forecast clearly shows that there's hope. The days ahead look brighter than the days behind us. But we need to ensure that the stars shine. Remember, stars shine the most when it is dark. Nigeria is going through a period of darkness, and this is the time that the president needs to identify and elect the stars for the next government.
Which areas exactly will be receiving this light you're talking about? Which areas can citizens hope towards? We would begin to see this light in the tunnel.
So it will be interesting to look at three major sectors. Let's look at what will be happening in the housing sector. Let's look at what will be happening in the health sector. And let's look at what will be happening to the education sector. But what I see is some ministers will come back. Don't ask me which of the ministers will come back. By the end of the day, the citizens should be the priority of the government. Politics of belonging really focuses on what should the people have. So it will be interesting to look at the next 4 years to see how well the economy will perform and to look at the choices that President Muhammadu Buhari will make, especially regarding his executive council. Here's what you need to remember. The president and his executive council are like co-joined twins. You can't separate the performance of the president from the performance of the executive council. So they sink and swim together. And the final advice for the president is, do not swim against the tide.
And hopefully better days ahead according to your forecast.
Oh, certainly. The days ahead are brighter than the days behind us.
Well, Babajide, thank you again for joining us on the news at 10.
Do not swim against the tide, Amara. Do not swim
I don't even know
against
how
the tide.
to swim, so okay.